phrase, the Boondocks versus Al Sharpton, can be understood just as well as a metaphor for differing civil rights philosophies as an actual press controversy. The Boondocks is a cartoon created by cartoonist Aaron McGruder. It was launched as a comic strip in 1996 and later became a televised cartoon which aired on the Cartoon Network for 4 seasons, starting in 2005 and ending in 2014. The cartoon centers around 2 black youth, a highly political leftist 10-year-old named Huey Freeman, after civil rights activist Huey Newton, and his impressionable thug-wannabe younger brother Riley Freeman. The two live with their granddad, Robert Freeman, in a predominantly white, relatively affluent area of Illinois. Race, politics, and African American pop culture and social issues are main themes in the show.
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
In 2006, the edgy and provocative show found itself amidst a controversy when American civil rights personality Reverend Al Sharpton took issue with the show's use of the N-word, particularly in an episode titled Return of the King. The episode presents an alternative history where Martin Luther King Jr. survives the assassination attempt and wakes up in the year 2000. He goes on to struggle with the chaos and divisiveness of post-9/11 America.
How do you think the United States should respond to the terror attacks of 9/11?
Well, as a Christian, we are taught that you should love thy enemy, and if attacked, you should turn the other cheek.
Of course, an Al-Qaeda lover like Martin Luther King wants us to just roll over and let the terrorists win.
Say you love America right now. Say it.
The party's basic philosophy is...
Say it!
Historiography is a recurring plot device in the series. High-concept alternative history is always likely to strike a chord with somebody, and when combined with the Boondocks' already provocative attitude, the episode was enough for Reverend Sharpton to call the press over, demanding an apology for the episode.
Black entertainment television is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
It is not, however, the he said, she said play-by-play that is interesting about this controversy, but rather let the case exposes an underlying irony about civil rights activism that is important to take note of. Although Reverend Sharpton acted sanctimoniously on this issue, much like he has acted in the past, he is no stranger to controversy. Sharpton has been criticized for his heated rhetoric, bold sweeping statements, and even for inspiring hate and racial tension in America. However, unlike the Boondocks' brand of controversial boundary pushing, many of Sharpton's controversies seem to have lacked the judgment and principle that McGruder puts into the cartoon. For instance, while Sharpton was quick to demand an apology from McGruder, he himself has refused to apologize for things that can almost certainly be understood as much more consequential disputes. A notable example of this is the Tawana Brawley rape allegation case, which gained enormous media attention in 1987 and 1988. Brawley, a then 15-year-old girl from New York, claimed to have been gang raped and tortured by white police officers. After the accusations were investigated, all the evidence suggested that Brawley fabricated the story in order to cover her own truancy and rule breaking and avoid being domestically abused for her behavior. Even after falsely and publicly accusing perpetrators by name, Sharpton never apologized and continues to refuse to do so. Instead of weighing the evidence and apologizing, Sharpton and his team, presumably feeling threatened by the mounting evidence against their case, continued to furiously protest and began to create elaborate conspiracies about the incident, some of which were so absurd that they would be out of place even in McGruder's satirical world, such as that the Mafia, Ku Klux Klan, and the Irish Republican Army played roles in the Brawley assault. Just listen to former State Attorney General John M. Ryan describe the absurdity and disarray of the media environment surrounding the case.
We started a rumor about a 9-fingered man, just to see how long it would take for a press report, to call us and start to ask about the 9-fingered man. I think it took 2 days.
Although this case is perhaps Sharpton's most notable, the style of his media interaction in this case is pretty characteristic of Sharpton for the era. The problem with this style, put simply, is that he's lying. Civil rights initiatives ought to be based on truth and honesty, and Sharpton blatantly and publicly violates this imperative principle. Another horrible and pernicious effect of this style of activism is that by creating empty media hysteria, Sharpton and his ilk threaten to create undue skepticism of the entire civil rights enterprise in America, potentially creating a boy who cried wolf effect on people who may have actually suffered from injustice. It was because of destructive and hypocritical antics like this, as well as media whoring and corruption scandals, that McGruder created Boondocks character Reverend Rollo Goodlove to satirize Sharpton and others like him.
When I shine, they walk toward me for the light of them diamonds. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But when they walk away from me, they got the light of that truth. I have a message for the Woodcrest School District.
Rollo Goodlove, what's that two-bit hustler doing here?
McGruder even went as far as addressing Sharpton himself and his outrage over the show on an episode of the Boondocks.
Folks, this heat will not let up. It is hot. And speaking of hot, Al Sharpton is hot right now, having a big old protest. He's like, Al's angry again at something. I believe it's a cartoon this time. In fact,
though brief, this reference draws attention to and dismisses the almost expectedly absurd of nature of Sharpton's civil rights crusade. Needless to say, McGruder did not apologize for the episode. What is perhaps more surprising is that neither did the network it aired on. Cartoon Network released a statement stating that the episode in no way was meant to offend or desecrate Martin Luther King, and that we at Cartoon Network think that Aaron McGruder came up with a thought-provoking way not only of showing Dr. King's bravery, but also of reminding us of what he stood for and fought for, and why even today it is important for all of us to remember that and continue to take action. What makes this media statement so amazing is that the network stood by their principles and took the effort to understand the work of an artist they employ. We live in a world where corporations constantly show weak character by caving into even the slightest pressure, but Cartoon Network stayed strong. Although corporations often scramble to seem politically correct or inoffensive, this sentiment is usually underlined by insincerity and willful ignorance. Whereas to actually support constructive social change, one must be articulate in their understanding and brave enough to be challenging. In spite of having a reputation for childishness, Cartoon Network must be given credit for espousing these very mature values in this instance. McGruder and Cartoon Network have demonstrated their commitment to a social and artistic vision, one that was lost on Sharpton and was thrown back in his face. Sharpton is not, however, a static cartoon character, and he himself has shown the ability to progress in a better direction.
Now become all of a sudden want to come and jump on this president
but I'm not
and sit there.
At least to some extent. So what lessons can one take from these states of affairs? I think there is a lot to be learned for those who intend to advocate and stand for civil rights and justice. Firstly, these events reinforce how important it is to have evidence to back the claims one makes. Also, the importance of maintaining open-mindedness and understanding, as well as the importance of taking responsibility for the types of media we choose to consume. The importance of being conscientious of the mediums of expression we use.
Did you just congratulate me for reading?
And the importance of being able to issue an apology where one is due and withhold when one is not. In order to reconcile the injustices of the past, we must demonstrate a strong and righteous moral character moving forward.